Well, let's get started. And I again want to welcome everybody to this meeting. This is, to me, a very exciting meeting to a presenter to have tonight. Um, as some of you know, I had a real challenge with people dropping out at the last minute, and Griffin was kind enough to step in. And I actually heard him last Friday do a presentation for another group. And I thought, oh my gosh, this guy's got his presentation all together, and it was fantastic. What a awesome person to have do a presentation for us. So we talked a little bit about the Solar Boat Regatta that MRES has coming up. And the only other quick thing I wanted to mention is that MRES again this year for many years has been doing the eco experience. And so anyone that can participate with us on that as a volunteer in any which way, directly or just during the week, the last week of August during the state fair, please get in contact with us on our website, and we'd love to have you. So, um, introducing Griffin Peck. He is the Sustainability Project Coordinator for the City of Morris. And Morris, to me, is just an awesome location. It's unbelievable what's going on out there with the U of M that I'm aware of. And Griffin shared all kinds of things last Friday that are in addition to what's going on at the U. So with that, Griffin, please proceed. Thank you so much again for doing this.
Thank you for that warm introduction. Yes, my name is Griffin Peck. I'm the Sustainability Project Coordinator for the City of Morris, and I also coordinate the Morris Model Partnership. And today I'll be just doing an overview of what the Morris Model is and what types of projects we've accomplished with both limited funding and staff capacity, and how it creates a model for sustainable development for greater Minnesota cities. First, oh, maybe, there we go. Okay, so just a quick agenda. I'll go over a little bit about what the Morris model is, then I'll discuss some of the initial projects that helped get the partners kind of organized. Then I'll review our first strategic plan, which was completed in 2018. Then we'll look at a number of projects that were done between 2018 and 2023. And that'll bring us to our strategic plan 2.0 that I helped complete last fall. And then we'll wrap up and have some time for questions. So first, what is the Morris model? So the Morris model is an umbrella community partnership, and it consists of key within the community. And this includes the City of Morris, the University of Minnesota Morris, the University of Minnesota West Central Research and Outreach Center, Stevens County, and the West Central Minnesota Climate Network, and others. And together, these partners work to advance a vision of what a rural model sustainable community can look like. And so each organization implements projects and goals within their operations to become more sustainable, as well as engaging the larger community in intentional strategic development to develop community-wide goals and projects to push our sustainability ambitions forward. And so some of the first projects that the city, created what we call the Morris model are here. And so one of the first projects was LED lighting on Main Street. And so back in 2014, the city manager was very interested in installing LED or upgrading or retrofitting the street lighting along our main street in our central business district to be LEDs. And he ran into some hesitancy with our utility, who we work with on those. And so instead of trying to keep pushing at the utility, he went and talked to the sustainability director at the University of Minnesota, Morris, and Troy Goodnow, and was able to learn about the LED lighting retrofits that were happening on campus and get connected with some resources to be able to actually install the LEDs. And it helped the city save 50,000 kilowatt hours in energy each year. There's a lot of different metrics on this, but the average US home might use 10,000 kilowatt hours. And so this was equivalent energy savings to that of the consumption of 5 homes in a year. And so that kind of started the city's appetite to want to pursue more sustainability projects and go bigger. And so one of the next projects that they worked on was LED lighting retrofit for the entire city's operations. And so they moved forward with replacing every light in every building, on every street with LEDs. And this saved the city an additional 257,000 kilowatt hours each year. And again, that savings and the financial savings that came with it were a really big motivator for our city to continue thinking about sustainability and how it could really help us with our ambitions. Another early project that I want to highlight is the Evergreen Energy District Heating Study. And so, for those of you who don't know, the University of Minnesota Morris is a relatively small campus, about 1,000 students. And it has a series of large natural gas boilers, along with a biogas heating system as well. And those systems combined have a much higher capacity than what the university campus demands. And so we worked with the Morris Area School District and the Stevens Community Medical Center, which are located adjacent to the campus, to study whether or not these buildings could be connected onto the university's district heating loop. And the study showed that, it could be. And then, that winter, right before they were going to move forward with this project, one of the boilers in the elementary school failed. And so they had to replace it. You can't just not have heating in the school in the middle of winter. And so that kind of hamstringed some of the moving forward with this project, but it was a cool opportunity for the university, the school district, and our medical center to all think jointly about how what would normally be labeled a sustainability project could bring long-term resilience and cost savings to them and their operations. And then one more kind of thing that the city and university have worked closely on over the years is working with interns and Green Corps members. And so the city has hired interns from the university's Office of Sustainability to work on different city sustainability projects. But they've also worked with German J1 interns. And so the city is a part of this Climate Smart Municipalities partnership through the Institute on the Environment. And we partner with the engineering school in Munster, Germany. And we host German engineering students as interns every year in the collaboration between the city and the university. And then also our other partners also host interns. And these interns, as well as interns from the university and Green Corps service members, which again, Green Corps is a arm of the AmeriCorps program that's Minnesota specific, and it pairs young people looking to make a difference with cities looking to do sustainability projects, or it might be a green infrastructure project or a waste project, but these AmeriCorps members can be placed with cities to help add capacity to work on these projects that a small city might not otherwise have the bandwidth to think about. And so over the years, the city and the university have worked closely to host a number of interns from the university, Green Corps members, and German J1 interns as well. So going from there, that brings us to kind of 2018, where the Morris model decided, hey, it's time we create a strategic plan to kind of frame how we think about sustainability and how we approach sustainability within our community. And so we received funding from West Central Initiative, which is our regional development organization. And the people who were leading the Morris model at the time chose to have a 2-day retreat at Camp Ripley in central Minnesota. And they invited 35 local leaders and stakeholders to attend the retreat. And then it was facilitated by Morris Model Partners, the Clean Energy Resource Teams, or CERTs, West Central Initiative, and the Minnesota State Office of Enterprise Sustainability. And from this strategic planning effort, we kind of came up with these two areas. We had our big three goals, which are to produce 80% of the energy we consume from renewables within the county by 2030, to reduce energy consumption by 30% by 2030, and to end landfilling of waste within the county by 2025. And then we also produced a list of 100 projects. And so we asked our local leaders and our Morris Model members and local stakeholders to dream big and think outside of the box, and that no project was too big or impossible. And so we came up with this list of 100 aspirational projects that we wanted to work on and complete. And in the time since then, we've worked on a lot of projects. And so approximately half of the 100 projects, so a little over 50 projects have been worked on in the 5 years between 2018 and 2023. And that's with our small team. I mean, the Morris model at its core is 3 people at the University of Minnesota Morris, my position with the city, 2 individuals at the West Central Research and Outreach Center, and then 1 individual each at the school district and the county. And so with that small team and working out with interns and partnership, we were able to accomplish a lot of projects, over half of the aspirational projects that our community had identified in the beginning. And so I'll review some of those now. And so first, and maybe most important, or maybe not the most important, but one of the big projects that they worked on right away was getting this position for the city. And so the director of sustainability at the University of Minnesota Morris, Troy Goodnow, worked with the city manager to write an LCCMR grant that was used to hire the position and is currently funding my position. And so the LCCMR is the Legislative Citizen Commission on Minnesota Resources, and it appropriates money from the Environmental Natural Resources Trust Fund, which is funded through the Minnesota Lottery. And this funding can support projects ranging from invasive species removals or sustainability coordinators to environmental education and habitat and recreation. I've even seen LCCMR funding being used to construct bike paths and that kind of thing. And so we've been lucky enough to have 2 LCCMR grants that have supported this position. First one from 2019 to 2022, and then a second one from 2022 to 2025. The first grant focused on modeling energy and environmental roadmaps for other Minnesota communities. So essentially documenting kind of how the city of Morris and the Morris model have had success, and then creating a roadmap or a document that can be shared widely with other Minnesota communities who want to replicate what we have attempted to do here in Morris. And so that grant wrapped up in 2022. And then the second grant is focused on greenhouse gas emission reductions and inventories. And so I completed an inventory of city operations to, know how much greenhouse gas emissions are coming from our operations and from what sources, so that we can better target future projects. And then I'm also working to implement policies in local government that will help us reduce greenhouse gas emissions over time. So whether that's a policy to install solar on every building by 2030, or a policy to consider heat pumps instead of natural gas for heating. All of that would support that grant. And then after 2025, we've been lucky enough to receive funding from the Department of Energy Energizing Rural Communities program. Last summer, our community won $100,000 through this program. And this summer, we'll have the opportunity to compete for an additional $200,000, which will help extend the lifetime of this position with the city by many more years. Another cool project, and something I will highlight, is that after the project name on each of these slides, there's the attribution of which partners or which areas of our community worked on it. And so this one was a county business Morris model kind of all working on this. And so in 2019, the Morris model worked with our local dairy giant, Riverview, to study, build, and open and operate a renewable natural gas facility that would take methane from farm digesters and inject it directly into our local natural gas pipeline. And so we worked with the Riverview and the company Amp Americas and worked with the county to get conditional use permits that allowed them to bury their low pressure lines in the county right of way, which circumvented having to go through private land, which is expensive and time consuming. And so this helped the project get up off the ground and get started very quickly. And the plant collects methane from approximately 30,000 head of dairy cattle each day. And then it cleanses it, pressurizes it, and injects it into our local pipeline. And it's virtually sold on the California green fuels market, but in reality, it flows to houses within our county. And so at the end of the day, this is a project that injects renewable natural gas that ends up getting used in homes in Stevens County, which is super cool. Another really interesting project that a lot of people are familiar with is the West Central Research and Outreach Center's work on green hydrogen and green ammonia. And so they're really an international leader in this research, and they developed the first wind to hydrogen to ammonia platform in the world. And essentially how this works is you use the energy produced from a wind turbine or another clean energy source to run a hydrogen electrolyzer to produce the hydrogen, to run a nitrogen scrubber to scrub nitrogen out of the atmosphere, and then to run a machine that performs the Haber-Bosch process, which slams the nitrogen and the hydrogen together to create the anhydrous ammonia. And so this platform that they currently have is a demonstration facility, but this summer it'll be upgraded to produce up to 1 ton of anhydrous ammonia each day. And this will create, instead of a demonstration scale, it'll create a community scale plant. And so this ammonia will then be sold to our local co-op and used on local agricultural operations, which will significantly reduce some of the costs associated with farming locally. The West Central Research and Outreach Center is also partnered with various other entities to explore the applications for green hydrogen and ammonia, including as an alternative farm fuel and as a drop-in replacement for natural gas peaking plants that are used to absorb changes in grid demand. And so, you know, this presents a huge opportunity for communities in many areas. First, the agricultural piece is that when you look at a wind resource map of the United States, it almost perfectly lines up with where all the corn is grown in the US. And one of the big costs associated with corn is the ammonia fertilizer for it. And during the pandemic, when we were having supply chain issues and stuff, we saw the price of anhydrous ammonia that is traditionally produced either in the southern US or overseas skyrocket to $1,600, $1,700, $1,800 a ton, which is insane when you consider that with green hydrogen credits, we can produce the ammonia locally from wind for $400 a ton. And so, again, this presents a huge opportunity for not just Morris or Minnesota, but really the entire upper Midwest to be a hub for production of ammonia and clean energy. Another really interesting project is we got some of the first electric school buses in our community in greater Minnesota. And so in 2019, a student who was interning with the Office of Sustainability worked with the school district to apply for and receive some of these first electric buses as part of the Volkswagen settlement. And as an early adopter, the Morris area schools has been able to learn several key insights that are now informing electric bus procurement across the rest of the state of Minnesota. And so some of the unanticipated challenges with buses was that the range was significantly impacted by driving on gravel roads or on very windy days outside of town. And so these attributes are unique to a rural school district. And so, the lessons we learned in Morris with our electric buses are not the same lessons that, like the school district in Lakeville might have, because they're driving on primarily protected residential streets, whereas in Morris, the Morris Area School District is an open enrolled school district. And so all of our buses are on 60-mile plus routes, and all of our buses drive out to farmsteads to drop kids off. And so when you combine, a bus driving into a 50-mile-an-hour headwind, and it's, 10 degrees outside, and you're driving on a squishy, not good traction gravel road, that reduce the range by as much as 50%. And so that was, this anticipated problem that is important and will inform the future procurement of buses across the state, but also shows that, okay, well, maybe in the future when we redesign our bus routes, we can put our electric bus routes on the shorter routes and we can put our gas buses on the longer routes. And it is also a cool example of a university student working with the school district to get these buses. Like, the person who runs the transit at the school district didn't have to sit down and read through a complicated federal grant. Instead, a student got to get this really high quality work experience while also providing some critical capacity for the school district to pursue getting these buses. One of the projects that I've worked a lot on, and I'm not fully responsible for, but have had a lot of experience with, are the solar that we have installed on our city buildings. And so in 2021 and 2022, the city installed solar on 4 of our public buildings. It's on our city hall, our community center, our library, and our liquor store. And by installing the solar on 4 different building types, we've been able to gather some really valuable data regarding the performance of solar on these different building uses, right? And so the solar on our city hall meets the demands of city hall in a very different way than the solar on our liquor store meets the demands of the liquor store. Whereas the city hall is an office building with generally lower overall demand and a generally flat demand curve, the liquor store has significant heating and cooling requirements, primarily refrigeration for the coolers. And that makes solar a much better investment for the liquor store, we found by studying this data. And so we've been able to share this data with other communities across greater Minnesota and within the metro. So that's one of the cool things that I kind of like about working with MRES and in MRES is that, not only are we talking to other cities in greater Minnesota that want to think about sustainability, but we're at a point now where we're starting to outpace some of the cities in the metro. And so it's cool that they get to come to us and ask, us how to think about sustainability and how to, pass when really like how to pass it with councils, right? In MRES, we have a fairly conservative city council. And so these metro cities are having a hard time passing solar, even with their liberal city councils. And so they're like, how do you do it? And really, it's the cost savings. The solar on these 4 buildings has saved the city over $20,000 since being installed and will pay off in roughly 13 years and save the city over $150,000 over the lifetime of the project. Another project that's connected to this is exploring solar for our water and wastewater treatment plant. And so in 2019, the city installed a new central water treatment plant that softens the water centrally instead of having, point source softeners in people's houses that use salt. This process uses soda ash and lime to soften the water and to take the carbonates out of the water. And so this was done primarily to reduce chloride pollution in our river from our wastewater treatment plant. But it came with significantly, and that piece did work. It did reduce chloride pollution significantly, but it also came with a significantly higher operating cost. There was about an 800% increase in electricity use from what the old plant used to what this new plant uses. And so I've been exploring solar primarily as a method to help reduce some of those costs and to help save the city money in operating this new facility. And so adding the solar that I have pictured here, it would be 630 kilowatts for the water treatment plant and 110 kilowatts for our wastewater plant. And that would be roughly $1.9 million in solar projects. We would get around $900,000 in incentives and tax credits. And so it's about $1 million left that we have to figure out how to finance. But with the high operating costs of these plants, it would pay off in roughly 18 years and still save the city roughly $840,000. When you combine it with doing a longer term estimation, the city could easily save $2 million in utility costs well before the solar panels reach their useful end of life. Another project that I've worked on is community resilience building. And so starting in 2019, the city and the university collaborated to engage the community in doing enhanced resilience building with a novel technique called the CRB, or Community Resilience Building Framework, by Dr. Adam Welter from the Nature Conservancy. And so the process began with 6 virtual lectures from local experts on how a changing climate will impact local ways of life in areas from business and recreation to weather and agriculture. And then they moved on to having this workshop where and this was held over Zoom in 2022. And the workshop model asked the guests to identify hazards, vulnerabilities, and strengths, and then to identify and prioritize community actions, and then determine overall priority of actions for different entities and institutions. And the reason why this is really unique is it takes a bottom-up approach to resilience. And so it meets people, residents, stakeholders, business owners right where they are, and asks them, what do you personally identify? Not what me as the city person is identifying and saying these are our problems, or the person at the county saying these are our problems. What do you as the resident or as the business owner identify as a risk? And how should the institutions of power within our community go after working to reduce those risks and increase our resilience, whether it's to extreme weather or climate change or flooding or any number of impacts. And then from there, we had a opportunity, we'll call it, to test our resilience. And so this workshop was held in March of 2022. A couple months later, in May of 2022, our community was hit with a massive storm. 95-mile-an-hour winds caused significant damage across the community. Hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars in damage from these straight line winds. The generator at our wastewater treatment plant failed, and we had to release raw sewage directly into our river. And while the city proper itself was without power for about 20 hours, there were portions of our county that were without power for more than 5 days. And so this, gave us the opportunity to do some reflecting on this plan we just completed and to see whether or not the hazards and vulnerabilities that were identified in this plan held up to what we experienced when we had an extreme weather event. And so from there, we wanted to hold some community events. And so I hired another intern from the University of Minnesota to come in and work with me to hold 2 events, one specifically for our locally elected leaders to talk about the lessons learned from the storm and how we can improve. And then one more community-focused event where we invited the leaders of local institutions to talk about and specifically mention how they were recovering from the storm and how they were personally increasing their resilience. And so this picture here from left to right is my intern, Jude, myself, Whitney, who's the financial director from the city of Morris, Rebecca or Becky, who's the county administrator for Stevens County. And then on the end is Brian Herman, who's the vice chancellor of finance and facilities for the University of Minnesota Morris. And so you have these leaders from these 3 institutions that really help frame our community, saying, here's what happened when the storm hit us, here's what we learned, and here's how we're getting better. And so again, this is another opportunity for us to extend, what we're doing within our organizations to the community, and to have the community help inform what we're doing and thinking about. Another cool county project is countywide composting. So in 2019, they received a grant from the state to hire a solid waste coordinator for the first time. The coordinator, who's a UMN Morris graduate, Sid Bauer, researched other composting programs in Minnesota and then collaborated closely with the Pope Douglas Solid Waste Management to prepare materials to launch a composting program in Morris. Over 500 residential composting kits were given out across the community, and 5 community drop sites were installed. And then Sid also helped launch composting at the Morris Area School District, at the St. Mary's Private School, and with several local restaurants and businesses. And this organics program serves, a number of goals, primarily reducing our municipal solid waste and ending landfilling. But it also can relate to several other goals. And so currently, our solid waste in the city and in the county is hauled to one of two places. It's either hauled to a waste to energy facility in Alexandria, which is about 30 miles away, or it's hauled to a municipal solid waste landfill in Gwinner, North Dakota, which is about 200 miles away. And every day we send two 60-foot trucks to the landfill and one 60-foot truck to the incinerator. And so just thinking about the miles that these large, class 6 to class 8 trucks are putting on and burning fossil fuels every day just to transport our waste, let alone the actual emissions from the waste itself. That is a huge motivator for reducing how much MSW we send out. And so, and also the composting facility that we send our compost to is only 20 miles away. And so it makes a lot of sense to take the heaviest, wettest food and send it to the place that's closest to, our community, and then take the drier, less bulky items to the waste to energy facility in Alexandria, and then send as little waste as possible to the landfills in North Dakota. And so this program was launched successfully over the last couple of years. And then these 5 drop sites exist all around the community. So people who do composting in their houses just have their little green bag, take it out when it's full, and they can drop it off at any of these sites. And then the university, the school district, the private school, and then businesses and local restaurants are able to get daily organics pickup as well. Another thing that I've been working on with the city is sustainability spotlight articles for our local newspaper. And so I started writing these articles after a blog post that I wrote for the Morris Model blog just got published in the paper. And so I reached out to the owner of the newspaper and asked if they'd like me to write a sustainability column for them, and they said yes. And so I've been able to write over 20 different articles exploring topics in sustainability and answering questions from community members and others. And so, some of our articles have focused on just explaining what the Morris model is and how what our work looks like, to, talking about some of the things that the Morris model is involved in, like the Climate Smart Municipalities Network, or, increasing our use of electric vehicles, to also just thinking about questions that we get from communities, like understanding how the Inflation Reduction Act incentives work for residential improvements, or what do you do with wind turbine and solar panel waste? I heard these things are landfilled. That's not very sustainable. And so taking a time to hear that question for what it is, and then taking the time to meaningfully respond to it and say, you're right, it's not perfect that we landfill windmill blades, but we also landfill construction waste from coal-fired power plants when they are closed down, and we also landfill waste from everything else. And so if you don't have a problem with landfilling potentially toxic waste from a coal-fired power plant, but you do have a problem landfilling wooden and fiberglass wind turbine blades, that's an interesting conversation to dig into. And so I got to do that through these articles in the Times, and then it also helped communicate more with our community. And so we're able to share the sustainability stuff, and then also reach people that might not be on Facebook or on Instagram, or watching TV even, right? We have a significant retired population in Morris, and they love to read the newspaper. And so a great way to reach them is to put these articles in the newspaper, and it's been very successful, albeit me getting constantly recognized now when I go out in the community being like, are you the one from the newspaper? And it's like, yeah, I'm just trying to get ice cream and go home. But yeah, anyway. Another project that I got to work on is an energy and environmental education pathway. And so this takes inspiration from our sister city of Saarbeck, where in Saarbeck in Germany, they created an energy education pathway where they put the amount of kilowatt hours that their public buildings use just on the outside of the building saying, here's how much energy we're using and here's how much, we're offsetting it with renewables. And so we were kind of inspired by that to do something similar. And so the concept we came up with is to highlight various realms of sustainability. So focusing on the environmental, economic, and social lenses of sustainability. And so we had 10 signs that were installed along a 1/3 mile route in the central business district. And the signs highlight both city investments in clean energy, but also community investments in sustainable social and economic practices. And so we have a sign that's specifically dedicated to the farmers market and our local organic food co-op, as examples of, social and economic sustainability for our region, providing low cost or lower cost fresh produce in the summertime, and then also providing hard to get items like vegetarian and vegan and gluten-free items, year round. And then also a sign at our movie theater, which is also a cooperative. A number of years ago, the company that owned it was leaving and they were just going to sell it and they were going to get rid of it. And the community decided, we don't want to lose this asset. And so they came together and said, we want to purchase this and own this. And now the movie theater is owned cooperatively and runs, movies that are at every other movie theater in the state in Morris. And, that's an example of the community coming together and say, this is an asset that we need to keep here. And we understand that, in a town where your forms of entertainment are watching ducks or the windmills or going to a bar, we want to keep this piece of this place for our community to come to. And so this pathway runs through downtown and highlights city sustainability, clean energy, and shows, how the solar energy impact our energy consumption. And then also highlights various other examples of sustainability in the community from projects that have been completed over the last number of years. Maybe I need to speed up here, but this is a cool project at the University of Minnesota Morris campus. And so they're doing some really advanced research into energy storage. And they established the Center of Renewable Energy Storage Technology, or CREST. And currently they have one battery already installed on campus. So in 2023, an LFP, or lithium ferrous phosphate battery, was installed on the campus. And it is one of the first battery demonstrations in our region. The battery, it's in this insulated shipping container. The battery is not the size of the shipping container. It's just a few smaller things inside of there. But the battery's combined capacity is about 90 kilowatt hours. And this battery is capable of powering a 67-person residence hall overnight with stored renewable electricity. And so, it's virtually able to send power. So although it's not directly connected to the building, it's virtually able to release power to help offset the energy consumption of that building. And then currently the campus is working with our utility to install a flow battery that uses water and iron to store energy rather than expensive rare earth minerals like lithium. And so the battery will store the energy when the iron in the solution is metallic. And then when the iron is allowed to oxidize and rust, it releases the energy to be used. And so what's really, there's a number of things that are really attractive about this type of battery technology. The first one obviously being, not having to rely on any rare earth minerals or conflict minerals. The second being that the solution used to store the energy, this water, iron, and electrolyte solution, is not chemically or it's not a health hazard or it's not an environmental hazard. Like if it spills on the ground, there's not a special cleanup protocol. There's actually less iron in the water in these batteries than the iron in the groundwater in the city of Morris. And so this battery, when it's completed, will be capable of powering the entire campus for up to 12 hours. And so it will be a 1 megawatt, 12 megawatt hour battery. and it will be deployed to power the campus during emergencies and power outages. And then during standard grid operation, the utility will use it to help shave peak demand within the city and to help control load. And it'll also be an opportunity for the utility to understand better and study how they can use battery technology to control load on a grid that has higher renewable energy penetration. Another project that I'm currently working on is procuring the first electric transit bus in Greater Minnesota, one of the first. And so the city has applied to receive this bus, and we're on track to receive it later this year. And we will be one of two rural transit authorities piloting this technology, the other being Arrowhead Transit in Northeast Minnesota. And so what we'll do is we will put this electric cutaway bus through extensive real world testing on our transit service and share the results with MnDOT to help further inform EV bus procurement for other cities and entities across the state. And so the bus that we're getting is this, cutaway bus. And then in addition to the bus, we're also getting a DC fast charger. So the bus can be used on a morning shift, DC fast charge in the middle of the day, and then be used on an evening shift, as well as some high voltage electrical work to get the charger working correctly. In total, this project is funded through federal and state funding, and is roughly I want to say $470,000. The primary large expense in this case is the bus, which instead of buying a dedicated electric bus like you would with any other electric vehicle, Ford has yet to release a cutaway electric platform that is readily available. And so, what the bus companies do is they buy an internal combustion engine bus from from Ford. They pull the ICE engine and transmission out of it and install a battery and electric drivetrain in it. Then they send it to the bus manufacturer, who manufactures the bus on top of it. And then it gets sent to our bus vendor, who adds all of the shiny pieces on it before it's finally sent to us. And so we we first procured the bus last February, and we aren't getting it until the end of this year, the end of 2024. And we procured it in February of 2023. And so it's definitely been a long process, but a very exciting one for us and for our community. This is something I talked about earlier. I'll just briefly gloss over it. This is the greenhouse gas emissions inventory that I completed for the city of Morris. And I focused on 3 years, 2020, 2021, and 2022. As you can see, between our 2020 emissions and our 2022 emissions, our 2022 emissions were 6.9% higher. But I primarily attribute this to reduced electricity use in 2020 due to many of our city facilities not being open or used by the public. And so this report shows that we emit roughly 1,900 metric tons of CO2 each year, and that's between electricity, fleet fuel emissions, employee commuting, wastewater emissions, and various heating fuels. As you can see by the graphs here, our largest emissions category is emissions from our purchased electricity, followed by emissions from our wastewater treatment plant, followed by our fleet emissions, then finally followed by our on-campus, our different heating fuels. So the thing that I want to highlight here is that these wastewater emissions are not associated with any energy that the plant uses. Rather, the system we have in Morris is quite simple. It's just 5 settling ponds. And so that means that any methane or nitrous oxide or any other type of NOx that's produced during the breakdown of the organic matter is just released directly into the atmosphere. And unfortunately, methane and N2O and NOx are all highly potent greenhouse gases, methane being 30 times more potent, and NOx and N2O being over almost 300 times as potent as CO2, as 1 kilogram of CO2. And so, although the total N2O emissions were quite small when it's translated into the CO2 equivalent, which is what this graph shows. It makes up a large piece of our emissions that is hard to reduce unless we were to install a brand new, very costly wastewater treatment facility. And so our primary areas that I'm working on implementing policies to reduce emissions are reducing our purchased electricity, reducing our fleet mile usage, and reducing our in-building heating with fossil fuels. Uh, we're also an EV smart city, and so over the past year, we've been working with the Great Plains Institute to receive technical assistance to help prepare our community for the EV transition. Uh, for us, this has primarily been in the planning and regulation categories. So thinking of zoning ordinances, parking ordinances, and parking lot requirements for EV chargers, as well as developing a design standard for EV chargers within our community. We also developed an EV vision with SMART goals for the community. And we've been recognized as an electric explorer by the Great Plains Institute. So although we didn't get certified in this round, we were recognized for the amount of early adopters that we've been in the EV space, whether it's our transit bus, our school buses, our city vehicle, or the number of public chargers we have installed throughout the city. And then this was the report that I discussed that I completed under the first LCCMR grant. And the main thing I'll focus on here is that we created this roadmap. Really, it should be a circle in that in order to have success on working on sustainability in a rural community, you want to start with partnership by creating a broad cross-sectional partnership that includes stakeholders from a diverse set of backgrounds. Then you want to do energy and resource benchmarking for those organizations and for your community. Then using that data, you want to work with your community partners to develop goals and projects for your community. Then it's a matter of going out and doing the projects and then working to educate the community about what you're doing. And then ideally, this is a circle. And so you go out and do a bunch of projects and do a bunch of education, and then you come back and reaffirm and expand community partnership, complete advanced energy and resource benchmarking, and and continue working on updating your community's vision of what's possible for sustainability. So this brings us to our strategic plan 2.0. I'm going to speed through this because I want to make sure we have some time for questions. But if anyone has specific questions on anything I say, everyone on this call is more than welcome to email me, Zoom call me anytime. Anyway, we made a lot of progress in 5 years as a team. That was just a taste of some of the projects that we've done. And so we thought, if we expanded our team and our Morse model network, how much more could we accomplish together? We also, recognize that there's this new transformative funding available through the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act. And so we are saying, if there's all this money available and we had these huge dreams back in 2018, what's the next step? What's the bigger dream for our community that we can use to go after some of this funding? And then finally, we wanted to update our strategic plan so that it aligned better with regional and national plans that used the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And so we thought that if our plans reflect ideas that are present in regional and national plans, perhaps we could unlock synergistic funding. Whereas, if the state of Minnesota has identified that they want to install 10 community resilience hubs by 2030, and in our strategic plan, we have that we want a community resilience hub in our community, that could mean that we're a prime candidate to work with the state of Minnesota to receive funding to install that type of asset in our community. And we also wanted to think about if using more plain language, like the language used in the Sustainable Development Goals, could help broaden our coalition and bring more people into the realm of thinking about sustainable and community development. And so we focused on having 2 community events that engaged over 150 local stakeholders and leaders and citizens. And the first event was just primarily a planning event with reports from Morse model partners and time for brainstorming and goal setting. And then the second event served as an opportunity for the community to provide feedback on what the first event had kind of produced, as well as to celebrate, all of the work that we had been doing. We also organized partner meetings to come up with organizational level goals and projects. And so we organized one-on-one partner meetings with each of our partners. And this allowed us to meet privately and dream big and ask questions. And then we also added a new partner, which is a community climate group that's made up of concerned and motivated locals. And so we were able to expand the model to include more of the community. And then the final plan we had was written by myself, along with a community planner from our sister city of Saarbeck. And so Guido Wallraven is well known in Germany for his work with the city of Saarbeck. And he was really the mastermind behind getting the community ready to do the projects that they've done there, which they produce roughly 450% of the energy they consume from renewables, which is just crazy to think about. And so we worked together to aggregate all of the ideas and conversations from our two community events and our partner meetings to craft an update to the strategic plan. Very quickly, again, sorry to be rushing at the end here. The first event we had was very intentional and consisted of some presentations from progress from our MRES model partners. And then that was followed by a framing presentation by myself, essentially saying why we're here, what we're doing, and how we're going to do it. And then we asked guests to sit at specific SDG tables, and we asked them to brainstorm how the SDGs show up in their communities, and then how we can make progress, and how to develop. And we had them develop some goals and some project ideas. And then at each table, there was a Morris model partner who served as the moderator, as well as a University of Minnesota Morris student to serve as a recorder. And then we ended the event with, sorry, what was that?
Go ahead, Griffin.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes. We ended the event with cross-table collaboration so that folks who were at the education table could give input on the folks at the economic table, and folks at the economic table could give input to the folks at the food table. And this is, so what I did is I sent out the invitations very early for this so that I could get a list of people who we knew would be there. And then I created specific seating charts for those people, and based on where that we knew that they would do well. And so there were some people who, are part of our community that aren't the biggest fans of renewable energy, but are really big fans of food security. And so they got to sit at the table that thought about food security and health access and housing. And then, we have some people that are, really big on economic growth, but not as big on climate action. So we got to bring more people into our coalition to think about sustainability within realms that are important to them. And then we had our partner meetings where we developed goals with each of our partner organizations. And then at our second and final event, we started with a sustainability salon where we invited speakers who aren't a part of the Morris model or connected to the Morris model to speak. And that included the CEO of our local Chevrolet dealership and the president of our Regional Initiative Foundation. Then we presented the updated plan to the community, and we asked guests to their reactions to the proposed goals and projects, and if there was anything we could add, and then how we should prioritize our projects. I tried to follow a similar model as to what we used when we did our community resilience building plan and workshop to inform how I designed these events. And there's another picture from the second event. And then this is what we had people focus on. And so they received, each table received these goals and projects that were developed at the first event. And then we asked them to kind of take them and make them more succinct and create, a list of projects with responsible parties for each of them. And then we were able to create this plan. And so the final plan acts as an update or a puzzle piece that we're adding on to our initial strategic plan. It maintains the big three goals from the first strategic plan to produce renewable energy locally, to end landfilling of waste, and to reduce energy use. and as well as adding 64 new projects for the community and 40 new goals for our partner organizations. And the plan emphasizes, and oh, I already said that. And so then some next steps that we're working on now are creating interest groups based on the 7 SDG areas that we have here, to help inform future planning efforts and implementation efforts by different Morris Model partners. We're also committing to host 1 to 2 community events per year to share our progress and to, discuss how we are working on different things in the community. And then we also have a goal to complete 10 projects from the new plan each year. And so that's about it on my time. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about the Morris model and our work to make Morris a model sustainable rural community. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Griffin. Great. Pete, you had your hand up for a while. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention to Griffin, everybody likes the word energy, but it would help your presentation, or at least it would help to clarify us for the viewers when you're talking about electricity versus energy, because you're talking about your county being 80% energy independent by 2030, but you surely don't mean heating fuels and motor fuels. So I took it to mean you meant electricity, but everybody just likes the word energy when they really mean electricity. So thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So the language in our plan is broad on purpose because it means that, you know, the people who are less renewables focused, can be like, oh yeah, we meet our goal because we produce 10 million gallons of ethanol locally every year. Or, oh yeah, we meet our goal because we produce RNG locally. Um, and then there's others who want to see more renewables. I think long term, right, if we think about long term electrification and renewable strategies, the goal is to electrify everything and to get our buildings off of fossil fuel heat. And so ideally, it would be 80% of the energy consumed within buildings. For sure, at least the energy consumed from the grid would come from renewables. But I appreciate the insight.
Barbara, go ahead. You're muted.
Please review your ammonia speech. So what price did you say you could produce the green ammonia for?
So I believe in the presentation I said 400. I'm going to be honest, I don't know if that's the exact number because I was just pulling that from the top of my head. But because there's significant incentives for the production of green hydrogen to the tune of $1 or $2 per kilogram, that's part of why the production cost is so low, is because there's a lot of incentives for producing green hydrogen right now.
So it went past so fast. What are you actually doing about it then?
So the research farm in Morris is one of the only facilities in the country that currently produces it, and they're working with regional leaders as well as federal leaders to establish a hydrogen hub in Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota. And so it's called the Heartland Hub, and its goal is to produce green hydrogen and eventually green ammonia that could both work as for fertilizer, but also, and I didn't touch on it as much in the presentation, but the opportunity with green hydrogen is that you could take renewable energy from Western Minnesota or the Dakotas, and instead of building out 1 million miles of transmission lines to get it to where the demand is, you could produce green hydrogen with it and then transport the green hydrogen to where the demand is. So you're solving the problem of our grid being not adequate to keep up with the amount of electricity that we're using currently. And you're circumnavigating that by, instead of building out more transmission to connect generation to demand, you're able to store energy in the form of green hydrogen and transport it wherever you want, and then use it either in a green hydrogen genset or something similar. Is that kind of what you were asking about, or?
Well, yeah, so you produce hydrogen by electrolysis of water with solar energy when the sun is out. Is that the idea?
Yeah, so at the West Rock they use a wind turbine. So we have two 1.68 megawatt wind turbines that are connected to the research farm in the university in Morris.
And then, so wind turbine, electrolysis, hydrogen, and
Hmm.
then the transport you, so potentiality of transporting that as a gas to, say, Chicago, and
Yep,
burning it in genset to make electricity.
correct.
Is
Yep, yep. And then the
How do
other
you,
thing oh, yes,
how do you transport it as a gas in trucks?
in trucks. Yep. And that infrastructure is well built out in European markets and would be easily transferable to a regional scale within the US. Um,
So you're
but
saying
also,
already in Germany, they're producing green hydrogen
yes, yep.
significantly?
And just the infrastructure for hydrogen is a lot more built out there. And they've also received several billion euros of investment over the last couple of years because of the war with Ukraine and the waning dependence on Russian natural gas. They're working at the speed of light essentially to transition to a hydrogen heating fuel rather than natural gas because of the larger global political things that are happening. And so that's what we're seeing in Germany. And we know that the infrastructure would translate well at a regional scale to the US.
Well, you're familiar with the Hindenburg
I
trend.
am familiar with the Hindenburg. So, yes, hydrogen is very explosive, which is where the ammonia comes into play. So, you're right that hydrogen on its own is very expensive to transport because it's so flammable and has to be held under high pressure. But if you tack those three hydrogen molecules onto a nitrogen molecule, then you get that ammonia molecule.
Yeah.
And it's much easier to store and transport ammonia because we already have a system for doing that with the use of ammonia fertilizer. And so a lot of the research, what they're doing at the West Rock is looking at making green hydrogen, using the green hydrogen to make green ammonia. Then you can use the ammonia as the storage, source.
Mm.
And then the ammonia isn't flammable, isn't explosive or anything like that, like with what we're talking about with the Hindenburg. But then you can still crack the nitrogen off of it. You would take two NH3 molecules, create one N2 molecule and three H2 molecules. And so that would be a way of transporting the hydrogen longer distances without the risks associated with transporting it as hydrogen as compared to transporting it as ammonia.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great concept. I mean, the whole idea of jumping ahead with the transmission line problems that we have, doing something like that. Hey, Griffin, just a couple quick questions. Are you involved with that solar, I guess, agri-solar project at the Rock, where they're putting cattle underneath the solar panels? Are you involved in that one?
So I'm not directly involved in that, but that is one of our more smaller projects. I did trim a couple slides from the presentation I gave last week because I knew I was going to go long. And I went long in that presentation too. And so I trimmed a couple slides. But yes, the West Central Research and Outreach Center and the University of Minnesota Morris have collaborated to install a 240 kilowatt solar array that's lifted 10 feet off the ground. And the array like structures are spaced further apart. And that facilitates a couple of things. It allows cattle to graze underneath the solar and then stand in the shade of the solar during the hottest part of the day. And so on that piece, there are researchers at the West Central Research and Outreach Center who are studying the level of heat stress in the cows and seeing whether or not if having shade in the field of having shade in the fields that they graze in would either reduce heat stress and or increase milk production. And then they're also studying what types of crops can be grown both under and in between rows of solar. So there are certain crops that don't need as much direct sunlight that do really well underneath the solar. And then there are crops that need direct sunlight and also need a lot of water that do well in between the solar because they get the sun during the middle of the day. So that's good. But then the condensation that builds up on the solar panels, like on the slanted piece of the solar panel, will slide down and actually help keep the plants better hydrated or better watered in drought prone or drought stressed areas as well. And so that's a really cool project that I didn't get to include in this presentation just for time's sake. But yeah, another really great example of how the university campus and the research farm are collaborating to consider how renewables can be deployed in a way that doesn't compromise like people's existing business models, but instead adds a second valuable stream of income.
I love the fact that they're also Eric's working on that electric tractor project. And you're aware of that, I'm sure, right?
Yes, yep. We took delivery of the Monarch Mark V, or the Westrock took delivery of it in December, and so I have driven it. It is a fun little tractor. It was the first tractor I've ever driven, I should say. But it's really cool, and it's an autonomous tractor, and so it has 10 cameras on it, and so it can go through the fields and do work autonomously. And then it also has some a standard, I can't remember what the mounting point is called, but it has the standard mounting point that all other tractors like John Deere and Case have, so it can work with any standard tractor implement. And so they actually used it in March to do snow blowing when we had some snow out here. So they attached a snowblower implement to the front of it and took it out, and they used it to snow blow the rock.
That connection is a 3-point hitch, they call it. But
yeah.
Anyway, the other thing I just have to ask you, the place in Germany, you said they're producing, was it 450% of their needs? What are they doing to do something like that?
Yes. If it's okay, I might just pull up a picture if that works better. I'm just gonna pause my sharing for a second and get a new picture pulled up. Our sister city of Saarbeck, they're in North Rhine-Westphalia in Germany. And like I said, they produce 450% of the energy they consume from renewables. And this is because they, as a community in the early 2000s, were awarded the European Next Generation Energy Prize. And that was roughly €1 billion to install a really, unique, what they call bioenergy park. And so this bioenergy park has 5 megawatts of solar. It has 10 3-megawatt wind turbines, and then it also has a 1-megawatt biogas facility. And so I'm getting a picture pulled up right now. We can show that.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I mean, it shows what can happen if everything is coordinated.
Yep.
There's the bioenergy park. So it was built on an old military munitions storage facility. So back here, that's what you're seeing in the back here. There's 5 megawatts of solar mounted on the munition storage bunkers. Then in this front area here, this is their biogas facility where they digest bioresidues and manure from, I believe, 10 local farmers all own this cooperatively. And then I believe another 10 or no, I believe 3 or no, I'm not sure of the number, but there's another group of folks that own all of the wind turbines cooperatively as well. And so these 3, the biogas park, the 5 megawatts of solar, and the wind turbines produce 450% of the community's annual energy consumption. And so what that means is the folks who invested in the wind turbines and the solar when they were first putting them together now actually have an income stream from that because they're able to sell the energy back onto the German electricity grid and make money from it. And so not only is their community, you could say, a very close to carbon neutral community, but it's also a community where people have these streams of income from being able to sell renewable energy. And then also many of the homes in Sarbec have solar on them. I'd say the majority of homes do. And so I'll just, hopefully my Google image search will help me with this.
Is the facility also considered a oh God, I always want to say smart grid, but not a smart grid, a microgrid? That community?
Their facility is not, no. So it's a simple grid tied because they don't have any battery storage. If they
Okay.
had battery storage, they could make it into a microgrid. It does not seem that that's the direction they're heading in currently. Their current project they're working on is they're working to connect their biogas facility to a district heating system that will serve their industrial park. So they had a electrolyzer manufacturer set up their new manufacturing facility in Sarbec last year. And so they're working with that company as well as several others to connect them onto a district heating loop that will be heated with the biogas produced from their biogas plant.
Okay. Just one more quick question. I don't know if you said it or not, but how big is the city of Morris?
Yes, the city of Morris is 5,105 people.
Wow.
Okay. Wow.
So we are a small town. We're a state aid city. We have quite a our yearly budget is roughly $4 million, and so the majority of our sustainability and clean energy projects have been financed through grants and other funding sources.
Yeah. Chris, did you have something?
Yeah, a couple things. I don't know if I can remember all of them, but first of all, I wanted to know, I believe I saw you folks at the state fair a few years back. Are you having a booth at the fair this year?
So I'm not 100% sure. I know last year we hosted a day at the Green Step Cities booth. The city did, but I have been in contact with some of the folks at who run the Eco Experience about having a Morris dedicated booth or having like a Morris day in the Eco Experience. So that is something we're considering. Yep.
Well, the deadline for a pop-up is April 15th, so you missed it, but you can bend their ear. I wanted to know about that because I remember talking to folks some years back about your project with the ammonia wind, wind generated power for that. So it's so impressive. Oh my God, all you guys are doing. I wondered, by any chance, are you involved with the University of Minnesota in in here in the Twin Cities, uh, in that new transportation division that's like cross-functional fuels for machinery, farm machinery?
I personally am not involved in it.
Okay.
I'd have to be, I'm almost positive that our folks at the research farm are. Oh, and that's maybe something important to stipulate. The research farm in Morris, the West Central Research and Outreach Center, is not a part of the Morris campus.
Okay.
Technically, it's part of the St. Paul campus.
Oh.
So the research farm here, along with there's a research farm here, a research farm in Waseca, and then there's a research farm at the St. Paul campus. And I believe there might be one or two more in some of the other regions. But those research farms are all connected to the St. Paul campus. And so I'm not 100% sure if the folks that are working on the green ammonia at the Rock are connected with it. I'd assume they are. They work very closely with the fuels lab at the Twin Cities campus. And so I would assume that they are. But if they're not, I'll definitely mention it to them.
Well, it would be great to be able to send people over from the Eco Experience building to whatever booth you have to hear this story. I think it's just great and recruit some. I don't know if that's possible. But another question I had was what was the name of the German sustainability planner who you worked with on your strategic plan?
So his name is Guido Wallraven, which is spelled
I want to look him up. He sounds cool.
It's spelled Guido
Uh-huh.
Wallraven.
Okay. And the last question I have is like the electric buses. Is the same company who who are the companies you're involved with who are supplying you with the e-buses, the school buses in particular?
So the electric school buses that we got came from a Canadian company because
Okay.
when we got them, there weren't electric school buses being manufactured in the US at scale yet. So I believe that they use a different company now. The state does for their procurement. The company we used is Lion, which is a Canadian-based company.
Okay.
Very, very familiar name.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, boy, there's so many questions. I could go on forever. In fact, Griffin, when you get to Apple Valley visiting your parents or whatever, please give me a call because I want to buy you lunch and talk to you some more. Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is my contact information is I put it back up on the screen. Email me or text or call, normal working hours. And I'll probably pick up and I'm happy to talk with anyone about, more in depth about our projects, discuss projects I didn't cover today, and just share more of what we're doing here because that's
Okay.
the
I have one more question.
yes, okay.
Have you guys talked to the Biden administration about what you're doing? Wouldn't it be great if they were using you as an example of
So I agree that a lot of the benefits that we have in our community benefit from the IRA and some of his policies that he's helped pass. I would say we probably, even though myself and other members of our Morse model are fans, we have people are in our Morse model who are not fans, or quite the opposite, in fact. We have Trump supporters that are part of our Morse model who support sustainability, and that's because of how we frame it. And so I would be hesitant to uh, connect directly with one political party like that, simply because of the framing for our community.
sure, I understand. It's just it would be so great to sort of, you know, get the whole country thinking in that way. How about the bipartisan group? I don't know.
Right, right. And I think, one thing that, for sure the University of Minnesota Morris would be well set to do that on their own.
Yeah,
I would just say as like a Morris model partnership, it wouldn't make sense with our framing.
yeah.
But the university is well established to do that if they wanted to. They were the Morris model in the university were featured in the New York Times in 2022. They're featured in the Washington Post in 2023, and actually a little plug. For people, because I'm assuming people on this call are interested in sustainable reading subjects, I recommend getting this book called Total Garbage by Ed Humes. He has another really famous book called Garbology. And so this is his follow-up to his book called Garbology. And Morris is featured as as a solution. So this book is looking at how we fix our waste and solve our biggest climate problems. And he offers solutions in here. And Morris is featured prominently in the book as a community working on the solutions for climate change. And so a little recommended reading to wrap us up with Total Garbage by Ed Humes, features Morris as one of the cities who's working on the solutions to some of the biggest problems that everyone's facing.
Yeah, that's great.
Barbara, Barbara, we got just a very short question, then we got to go.
Well, I just figured out that the number of students there are 1,200. Is that part of the 5,100 people that you mentioned? In other words,
No. So that's generally in addition to it. And I will say 1,200 is probably on the high end, at least for the last couple of years. Since COVID, we've been having a hard time with our enrollment. I'd say that's probably close to where it is right now. So yeah, and that does not include, so the 5,100 population does not include college students. It also doesn't include our significant immigrant working population that works on our farms. So, you know, the true population of Morris is probably more something in the 6,000 range. But the people who live and work here is 5,100.
Well, Griffin, thank you so much for jumping in, and thank you for an awesome presentation. We will, it was wonderful. It was wonderful. And we've got a board meeting coming up, so we're going to have to drop out, at least the MRES group. And so, Ellie, thank you for webmastering. And Griffin, I'll talk to you probably in the near future, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you everyone for inviting me here today. It was a real pleasure to speak to you and get to share kind of what we're doing in Morris with you all.
Thank you.
Yep, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.